I've just realised my microphone was muted that entire time.
Yes, yeah, I popped in the chat. Do you want me to disappear again and appear like nothing's happened? And we'll start
No.
the intro?
I'm going to re-say what I said there because I think it's Bear's thing. The Stepping Up webcast has been going for quite some time, and we're in the business of not only digging into recruitment technologies and job boards and everyone involved in the technology and recruitment space, but finding out why these technologies exist, how they came to be, what the purpose is, and who they affect in the wider world of recruitment. And of course, everyone's in recruitment, whether you're a candidate, a hiring manager, an employer, or in the technology sector. So my very special guest today, thank you very much for joining us, Sam, is Sam Berthoud from Hackajob. Thanks for coming in today.
Always a pleasure, Stephen. We find ourselves connected and working together in all different walks of life, and nice to collaborate again on this one, buddy.
It looks like you're in a Disney theme park or a child's bedroom there.
Disney theme park. I've just come off a ride, just left the gift store, and I made it just in time for this. No, it's a pretty large piece of art that's adorning the wall that stretches across the entire space. So it's quite something.
Fantastic. So you're with Hackajob. We've spoken about Hackajob before, and we know that in the world of technologies, companies are always evolving what they do, broadening their scope, taking themselves to new markets and responding to what's going on in the world. For the benefit of people who are not fully switched on to Hackajob life, can you fill us in on what Hackajob is and what its purpose is?
Yeah, absolutely. We exist to connect candidates and companies, right? And we're a technical hiring platform. We're creating a community and a way of engaging with candidates that is slightly different to your normal job attraction or engagement process. So it's a reverse talent marketplace where the control is in the candidate's hands as opposed to the employers. And you are matched via an algorithm when both sides have intent to have that conversation and the needs are met. And with that, employers are then reaching out to candidates, and candidates have the opportunity to select the job. And ultimately, we're working across 3 primary markets in the UK, the US, and India. And then we've got a global remote community as well. And along that journey, we capture tons of insights, millions and millions of data points on candidates and what they want from their world of work, how they want to engage with work, where they want to work, the types of roles which they want to work in, the types of skills which they want to develop. And we use that to power our insights module. And then we break it down via protected characteristics as well to help organizations inform their diversity, equality, and inclusion strategies. So, lots of stuff within the wheelhouse, but really it's, the place for tech hiring.
That's a ton of stuff that you just spilled out there. So would you say that Hackajob is on a mission to change recruitment, or is Hackajob responding to the need for recruitment to change from candidates and employers themselves?
I think you're going to see this move for marketplace models more broadly. Our peers in kind of generalist recruitment in Indeed have obviously opened up a kind of matching marketplace, similar kind of model to what Hackajob's been doing for the past decade. In the technical community side, it was really driven by candidates, right? There simply are not enough technical candidates for the volume of demand, which is there from employers. So putting the power in the hands of the candidates was a really important part there. I think what you're seeing with marketplaces more broadly now and the continued rise of that reverse marketplace model and matching systems rather than sourcing systems is actually the ability for candidates to apply has become so much easier, right? Enabled by AI. You've got the more frictionless application, by the big aggregators. And actually the challenge is now relevance, right? You can turn on a job for applications. You're going to get hundreds of applications, whether the market is buoyant or not, because it's so much easier to do. So I think that's what's necessitated the change in those kind of high volume, non-specialist markets as well, is actually candidate volumes increasing in terms of applications. So it's interesting for sure. So that was a long way round of saying, I think that the marketplace model is definitely going to change. Are we on a mission to change it? I think we started that mission 10 years ago, but really we're driven by candidate wants, candidate behaviors, candidate data points, and employer side. So it's listening to both sides of the marketplace and then
Yeah.
creating an environment where it's most seamless and frictionless.
Yeah. For the longest time, candidates have not been in that position where they can assert themselves and push back on how recruitment is carried out, and how they find jobs or how jobs find them. And until relatively, in recent years, candidates have jumped through whichever hoops they were asked to in order to go through the process, as arduous as it was, to end up with the offer that they're looking for. But in a market that's always, or certainly always has been in the past 30 years, cyclical, where you'll have a candidate-led or job and employer-led marketplace where there's a surplus of one or the other, you don't see that it's going to go back. The pendulum's going to go back the other way, where the candidates will have less ability to stand their ground.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to that challenge of actually on the employer side, even when candidate markets are buoyant, the challenge that you've got now is that operational challenge of how you get through that volume of candidates and
Yeah.
how you ensure there's relevance there and engagement there. And often that means a more proactive kind of sourcing approach. Candidates are still available in that scenario, then, right? They've noted their intent in
Yeah.
order to move, and I think it's many different routes to finding a role, as which there's many different routes to finding a candidate, right? So I think that's one of the challenges. And then in terms of candidate expectations, I think the other part there is it's this consumer grade experience, right? It's the way in which we want to buy our products. In the same way, buying everything that you needed for your shopping day to day, you'd have to go to 6 different places potentially to get different artisans to bring you those different parts. And then you had the supermarket, right? And then from the supermarket, you moved to home delivery. And from home delivery, you're now moving to Tesco's will deliver in 5 minutes with Whoosh, where you can get Uber Eats or anything else. So I think like that speed, that immediacy is so apparent in all other parts of our life. It's kind of that expectation as well on like how you want to engage with jobs, how you want to engage with anything, the kind of user behavior when you're primarily using technology to apply and engage is paramount, right?
Mm-hmm. So would you say that there's a certain sector, a certain chunk of recruitment who would say, well, that's the tail wagging the dog. We're supposed to be in charge here. We're supposed to say, well, we're now hiring for this role. People can apply, but we're not going to be knocking on their doors. Is a resistance to the model that you have from legacy recruiters?
Yeah. I think yes and no. I think we do have the ability. Like if somebody wanted to send candidates straight to application, that's a possibility. But typically, the types of talent that we're dealing with on Hackajob, I can't speak to other platforms. If I think about Indeed, they're still going to have their job postings alongside the matching marketplace to serve both sides.
Yeah.
Typically, our advice would still be to employers like, this is a talent short market. No matter what market you're in on Earth, okay, there might be a slightly increased volume of labor and a slight decrease in demand, but the numbers globally are still outweighed to the tune of millions. So the onus is still on, the recruiter to make sure they're having that contact. You'd have that opportunity on Hackajob. Yes, you can send candidates to application, but you're going to get a lower response rate. You're going to have a lower engagement rate. Like it's not going to be the same experience as, making both parties know that, they're wanted in that environment.
Yeah. So you're not only covering, you mentioned specific geographies, the states, UK and India, and congratulations on launching in India, by the way. But you are covering a particular sector that could be described as being distinct from the wider world of recruitment, because the tech sector, developers and people in the technology industries have been very much in demand. These are the people who often, or more often than not, will shut down their LinkedIn profile because they're getting bombarded with offers or requests to have a talk about recruitment or job opportunities. In what way, to what degree would you say that specific sector is distinct from the wider world of recruitment, and so you're looking at it through that lens?
Yeah, and I think definitely we could look at it through the tech lens, but I'd probably just put it in any lens where there's a knowledge-based skill or any skill, in fact, that's in
Mm.
higher demand than it is in supply, because you're
Yeah,
still going to have that same effect, right? You're still going to have lots of work from recruitment consultancies, from RPOs, from in-house teams, all trying to reach the same demographic of which there's simply not enough of, which then
yeah,
creates that negative experience of too much noise, not enough signal. And I think that challenge then, permeates a bit further in when you're dealing with something with such a deep degree of technical expertise and variation that you would have
yeah,
within tech. It's not as simple as just saying I need a Java engineer or I need a end engineer, right? There's such subtleties and frameworks and ways of working and many, many different kind of permutations, which then make the relevance kind of decrease further when you're reaching out in those ways. And that's
mm,
where, from a candidate perspective, yes, they want to come to a place where maybe the relevance is there, but that would be true of any other low supply, high demand marketplace. And then the
mm,
inverse of that is, you're in a high demand, low demand and high supply marketplace,
yeah,
which, for the past 6 to 8 months has been recruitment, right? Has been recruiters who are
yeah,
going to be very vocal, very visible, attending events, being part of communities, making sure every part of their profile and CV is perfectly up to date because they want
mm,
to increase the amount of, noise which they're getting
yeah,
to generate that same signal. So I think I'll probably, decouple it from just tech and think about low
yeah.
demand and high demand, and then in the context of tech, it just amplifies some of those issues further because it's a little bit more depth to the skills taxonomy.
So you'll have access to a, an immense amount of data that reads the marketplace, or that reflects what's going on in the marketplace, how uh, people are evolving in their behaviors in terms of responding to jobs and so on. But one of the other things is that I've often spoke about the circulation of people in the workplace. It's a bit like blood in the body. Circulation is absolutely required. So people leaving a job to go to another job creates a vacancy, or companies growing
Mm.
creates a vacancy. But that circulation is absolutely essential. But what we've seen in the past couple of years is that circulation has uh, uh, swung pretty heavily, in a pendulum way. 2 years ago, exceptionally busy. Last year, less busy. Now we would say that it's maybe a bit more cautious, and that's in the wider world of recruitment. What are you seeing in terms of that circulation of people in the marketplace, people who are looking for the next step in terms of volumes or behaviors and types of roles that they might be looking for?
Yeah, and I think that attritional piece, that attritional hiring, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, right? You know how we had the phrases, coins, the Great Resignation, and everything
Yeah,
that came with it, monumentally high levels, intern, lots of recruitment activity, and then that kind of reduction, which was almost direct parallel, right? You take the
yeah,
averages of the two, that's probably quite similar to previous years, certainly, from the customers that we've spoken to.
yeah,
And then when we think about specifically, I think the circulation of talent is probably a different question altogether. It's like what you tend to see is there will be X emerging hotbed of talent, right? And it might be Belfast, or it might be Gdansk, or it might be Sao Paulo, or it might be Bengaluru, right? And you'll see organizations will cite and they'll think, right, this is the fastest growing. Organizations then move there in their droves, and
mm,
then it becomes an equally saturated, equally difficult market to hire in. And so I think
yeah,
that's one of the kind of typical patterns in tech. There's always the next hotspot
yeah,
where orgs move. And then particularly when we think about talent and skills right now, it's really where's the hotspot for AI and ML talent. That's what organizations are interested in. Where can I access
Where is that hotspot?
those. So in the UK, it's quite unusual. Like typically, you'd see the largest proportion of talent in London, um,
Mm,
as an overall share, over 50%, and then the rest of the UK would make up the rest. In
mm,
AI ML, it's actually a bit of the reverse. You'll see more outside of London than inside of London. London is still the biggest location. You've got
yeah,
places like Cambridge, which have got a really long-standing history in AI and ML from an academia perspective, and a lot of
mm,
that talent is moving into technology. And then you're seeing, the big techs opening up those AI hubs. India, of course, just by sheer market volume, and then US. as the three kind of high tenure locations where you're going to find senior experienced engineers. So yeah, interesting. And then the other part as well, when it comes to that location strategy, is as litigation and as kind of legal precedent starts to take place for large language models and AI and ML, you're going to see data centers appearing in different countries in order to be able to operate in those markets, because the subtleties of the laws will mean you can't necessarily have people in different locations. So that's going to be a really interesting one. But yeah, we've actually got some stuff coming out on that in the next couple of weeks of like where the talent is within that space, because it's, as you can imagine, the fastest growing skills that candidates are listing and interested in, and roles that they want to work in. And it's the fastest growing market from employer demands, followed closely by cybersecurity, which is then the knock-on impact of, hey, our data is now potentially being used in ways in which we don't want it to, or more sophisticated ways of accessing our critical systems. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting next few months.
That market intelligence is something that's, well, I was going to say endlessly fascinating. I'm sure I could get to the bottom of the fascinating side of it, because I have a ton of questions. But looking at those hotspots, is it still the case? Because we said a couple of years ago that geography is now irrelevant. Obviously, you can be anywhere, but it's still within national boundaries, I suppose. You can only relocate within your own country unless you have the ability and permissions and visas to work in other places. But those hotspots within Europe, you mentioned there, Gdansk, that kind of information, that kind of market intelligence, do you provide information that helps employers decide where they're going to set down a data center, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's one of the kind of core parts of what we do, right? We capture as much candidate information as we can, and millions and millions of data points. And really, before you start your hiring journey, you should be having informed decisions about, the markets in which you want to operate in, and the challenges and benefits for that. I think particularly for AI and ML, though, like this is a new field for tech at large in terms of media coverage and knowledge from the general population. But the reality is this field is much older than the last 18 months to 2 years. And those areas where it's been high density, high talent density for a long time, if you're looking for people that are going to transform your business, you'd be hard pressed to look outside the kind of long standing hubs and where that is. And then on that point of remote versus hybrid versus local talent, what we certainly see in the UK is, I think 3 years ago we hired or candidates were hired in 39 cities on the platform. Relatively small number. Last year it was 286, right? Which there's not even that many cities in the UK, and that's jobs being listed or candidates that are just, that is your work location, and that does speak to the hybrid work. It does speak to remote work, but we are seeing an increase in the number of on-site roles. We are seeing an increase in the number of days a week coming back into the office. But notwithstanding, it doesn't mean that you can pick up an AI ML engineer in one territory and then be able to hire them or be able to deploy them to work in another, because like I say, that kind of litigation piece and the legal and the governance around it, all of that's being written now, right? Or rewritten and added a lot more depth into it. And we've not seen a major case go from start to finish yet, and the outcome of that for the organizations at large. And I think that will be the most monumental shift. So I think remote local is probably here to stay, where you're hiring people in your nation, within the boundaries of the country that you're operating in legally, with individuals there for critical roles. And then, we've seen the growth of the employer of record organizations that are allowing you to hire anywhere. I think that will go in parallel, but it you can only use that where the talent is, right? So it really does depend on what you're hiring.
I a couple of years ago wrote about, as a lot of people did at the time, that people will be leaving the cities, leaving places that are really expensive to live, like London, and getting a house in Cornwall or Aberdeen or wherever they've got good broadband and it's a nice place to live. But has that been reflected in the the data that you're seeing on jobs, and also on the design of jobs. Because of course, if companies are moving out of their huge tower block in the middle of London, are they setting up maybe regional hubs where people can still go to a place, and it might only be a couple of days a week, it might be 3 or 4 days a week, but there are smaller hubs but dotted more around the country that are then there for staff with big organizations.
Yeah, I think you do see that, but I'd say the kind of by and large trend though is people are working from home for good periods of their week and now have some requirement to be in the office. That is still by and large the most commonly advertised role in tech is hybrid. From a candidate expectation point of view, remote and hybrid are absolutely far ahead of on-site by multiples. We have seen, there's certainly enterprise organizations that we work with that have maybe 7 or 8 sites where they might have had 1 or 2 before. Then what's the reality? And you come into those things, you want everybody to be involved in the meeting, and you've made hires during your remote period that are critical to a project, and you have one person that's dialing in, so everybody dials in, and you end up with people sitting in a hub office with 6 people looking at a screen when they're all in the same room as each other, right? So that the experience is equitable.
Sometimes it's the oddest thing that that can have an effect on the flow of how jobs are designed and where they're located. I saw something this week. They were talking about, actually, it was to do with, there was a government minister had sold a second home and not declared the profit on it. But I then saw that when you sell a home in the UK, if you make a profit on it and it's your home, you don't pay any tax on that. If you're working from home, if you're working full time from home, then it's a place of business, and you don't get the benefit of keeping all the profit tax free. So if you buy a house for 100 grand, sell it for 200 grand, the profit is taxable if you're working from home, which it sounds like a petty thing, and I'm not sure about how it would be enforced, but by the strict measure of the law, there's a factor in there. And when people are thinking about, well, do I want to do that? Am I going to declare that? How do I get around that? It's one of those tiny things that will have an effect on people deciding what they're going to do work-wise and where they're going to do it.
Well, quick disclaimer, Stephen, to be clear, I'm in an office today. So my home is not my office. Second one, though, if you're finding houses for 100,000 anywhere in the market, please share with your audience. I think affordable housing is a long thought after thing. And you should name and shame the minister as well. Well, we've got a vehicle to do so.
Was it Angela Rayner? Am I guessing the name right? Was it? I think it might have been. It was one of the Labour shadow ministers. That's what it was. It was a shadow minister. So, but the details to do with that are not especially relevant here. But it brought up that.
No, it does, and I think it's like, and then you'd balance that with your costs of travel and everything else. I think the bit which is very different in tech, and I'm seeing this today, right? I was not expecting to be in London whilst we were having this call. I don't have my setup. I don't have my lights and cameras and everything else that I would normally have. And in the same way, for technical candidates, one of the most important things is your setup, right? It's having your multiple screens. It's having, the computational power to run complex algorithms and contribute to the code base, right? So without that, you'd have to almost duplicate your setups to make that effective between your home and your work location. So that's one of the most important factors, is like, actually your setup at home is probably your ideal setup to be most optimal for your work. And then when you're in the office, it's for different things, which is, I don't think we need to spend much time talking about that because it's a well-trodden subject. But particularly in tech, I think your home setup is so important.
Yeah. So one area that, again, going back to that market intelligence that I'm really interested in is the redesigning of jobs. So a job 3-4 years ago would have been, a list of 10 or 20 tasks that you have that you're completing throughout the week, and people that you're working with, people that you report to or that report into you, and you'll have that structure. When you're not working from that one place, when you're working on the go and you have mixed locations that you're going to be, then the content of your job will be redesigned. They might say, right, well, instead of 10 tasks, you're going to have 5 tasks, but you're doing them much more so, and you can do that in a remote location much more effectively. In what way is that coming out that you're seeing in the jobs that are being matched with candidates, or candidates matched with jobs? And is there a pushback from candidates and job seekers on, well, I want a job that has this design for working remotely?
Yeah, and I think if you think about the kind of history of software development and the massive scale and growth in the number of developers and the way in which products are delivered,
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 years ago, you could probably neatly bucket people into, you're doing X job, you're doing Y job, you're doing Z job. Now the requirements from organizations are becoming increasingly specific. And I think part of that is due to, making sure that they've got exactly the right skills for their challenge right now. But part of that is due to the maturity of the discipline that is technical development, right? That is the reality. As more people become more and more specialist, you're going to see more and more kind of specialist job routes for people to go down. And then, big topic and one that's in vogue again, like is skills-based hiring and how organizations think about solving problems through skills. And I think, there's definitely some good commentary around that, and, the ability with the democratization, as I was chatting with Matt Alder the other day, on the democratization of assessments, the availability and kind of shelf life of skills, and with that changing, and the ability to kind of more broadly look at your organization, maybe we are in a better place to be able to enable that truly within organizations, because it certainly feels like the nirvana that we're heading towards is this kind of matrix model where you're utilizing different skills and delivering solutions to business objectives. But I certainly don't think we're there yet. And it's one of these like conversations that seems to circle every 4 to 5 years when there's a change in technology that could potentially enable. But with that in mind, I think the way in which we're looking at how candidates and employers have matched has changed, right? And it's not as arbitrary as X engineer, Y engineer, job title. The kind of definitions and the interplay between skills is so much more important now.
Yeah. So Hackajob is very much, and we've seen in the past couple of years, other companies, even though you've been around for a long time, other companies coming into the space of being candidate centric and putting control in the hands of candidates, and being able to say to candidates, well, here's the information that we have that will help you look into investigate potential employers, investigate jobs, look at the people who have previously worked there, and be more fully informed before you decide that you should go down a process with an organization. What I'm really interested in is are the ways in which candidates can, when starting a process, and you can call it applying, but of course with Hackajob, the job finds the candidate. But where the candidate says, well, I match with 4 of the 5 things that you're looking for. The 5th thing I don't have, but on the 4 I'm great, but can you train me on the 5th thing? So a way in which candidates can be pushing back is saying, well, in all other regards, I'm perfect. In fact, I'm better than you deserve. But can you help me with training in this other area that's going to make me a more useful and productive employee?
Yeah, and I think like we absolutely have that guidance for candidates. And I think a great place to look at that is our Trustpilot. We've got quite a human approach to the way in which we tackle that currently. I think again though, I'd zoom out, and I think the biggest players in the room for just hiring in general in Indeed and in LinkedIn, both of which have kind of got the control in the candidates, right? Yes, on LinkedIn you've got the ability to post jobs, but ultimately you're reaching out to a candidate, and the candidate's deciding whether to message you back or not. The intent might not be the same as building it within a vertical, talent marketplace solution like we have, but the kind of mechanism is similar. Indeed, obviously moving into this space is another kind of massive show of this move to relevance and engagement as opposed to volume, which has been the kind of the gold star for so long. And on that point of candidate skills and what they can do, like I said, we've got a very human approach to that at the moment. We've got additional kind of learning opportunities for candidates within the platform. And I think candidates are quite well informed, particularly in tech, as to what skills they need to attain and what the hot languages are, etc. And then zooming out again, this is of course what LinkedIn are trying to do with their total solution, right? In terms of the learning modules, suggestion, hey, if you built this skill, you'd be more findable. If you reference this, you'd be able to engage more cleanly, etc. So I think again, like the market shift is already there and the demand is already there.
Yeah.
And I think we're just going to continue to see more and more vertical based marketplace solutions arrive, not just in high demand, low supply markets, but in high demand, low supply.
Yeah. Hackajob is moving fast and accelerating. As you mentioned, you've recently launched in India, and that's no small thing to do. That's a huge step. In the coming months and year, what will be the key milestones or achievements that you're looking to have ticked off on the Hackajob highway?
Yeah, and so I think on our side, right, certainly for the marketplace part of what we're looking at there is we want to have liquidity on both sides. Like what we're really trading on for both parties involved, which is candidates and employers, is engagement and its relevance. And we can do that when we've got high liquidity. So we've got another market which is coming, which we're going to be launching formally soon. Customers, any watching will know that they're hiring in that location already. And really, will be led from customer demand. And we
Can you give us a hint on which marketplace?
It's European. So I think from like our setup, really, it's where high volumes of liquidity are, where we say we have a marketplace. But there are companies hiring, on Hackajob in the Netherlands, in Spain, in Portugal already, and we've got candidate interest from almost every market on earth. It's just about that point of when we turn on the engine, as it were, to make sure that both parties are getting a really consumer grade experience and high levels of engagement, high levels of relevance. And you obviously need liquidity to make that happen on an ongoing basis.
And there are hugely different cultures of hiring in different parts of the world. So bringing Hackajob to that, how is that generally met? Because is it going to be very different to how they've done things before, or does it make sense to them in the same way as it would make sense to employers in UK and Europe and the US?
See, I feel like I've been briefed here to say engagement and relevance about a million times, but there is no other way of answering it. I think regardless of hiring culture in any market, the ability to engage with people that want to engage with you and for them to be relevant for the role in which you're seeking is kind of the core tenets of what you're trying to achieve with recruitment in any market. The bits that follow, look, are we going to change the hiring culture of India with what we're doing with Hackajob of a 1.4 billion population? It's extremely unlikely. But by using Hackajob, will you be able to find candidates to repopulate your hiring funnel more quickly after you've had an offer reject or offer negotiation? That's the key kind of learning from our customer side. And obviously we do a lot of conversation before in India as our latest kind of high liquidity marketplace is candidates will surface multiple offers and they'll decide which job to go for, and dropout rate on the first day is higher than in other markets. In the US, the kind of way in which candidates are engaging with organizations is very different to the UK. But that withstanding, the main purpose of what you're trying to do is find somebody that wants to work for your organization and that you want to work for your organization, that have the skills that you need. The rest of it is then org specific, country specific, and the people. It's not as if, and I suppose this is the key thing, it's not as if by us launching in India, that's suddenly served by the same recruiter that's hiring software engineers into Portsmouth. It's going to be a different team as part of a global organization that are going to know the local market cultures and how to hire effectively in region. And I think what we're going to be able to provide as we continue to grow into new markets is then the type of information which we've been able to provide in the UK and the US on a global basis, and provide that extra data point of, how is it different? What are the kind of dropout rates? Where are you seeing, bigger impact on the business? So that's definitely an exciting thing to come.
Fantastic. So before you go, I have to ask, you've launched your own webcast or podcast just recently. Can I just double check? Are we calling webcast podcast now? Is that the thing?
I don't really know. It's not live.
Podcast was audio.
That's for sure. So Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been great. I think I've been, blessed with, my past before Hackajob, having, had the opportunity to watch so many fantastic speakers and
You're an amazing
commentators.
guest.
Yeah, and over the course of time, I think for us at Hackajob, my kind of personal mission
Mhm.
with it does have a tie to Hackajob. I think tech naturally has a tie to any recruitment because
Yeah,
it's typically the most critical role or one of the most critical roles within your organization. So it's important, but it's actually about broadening the discussion. And I think the bit
yeah,
which we were speaking about before, the kind of thread which is going to carry throughout is the justification of talent acquisition's existence. It
yeah,
is really the main thread. How do we evidence our impact clearly back to organizations as to the bottom line impact and the business impact of the org? And ultimately, everybody says that people are the most important part or most important asset within their organization. So, how do we
yeah.
put that front and center is the big hairy goal with it. The
Mhm.
reality is it's conversations that go in different directions with really interesting people that are better
Yeah.
informed than I. So, I pose the questions. And of
So who,
course, you'll be joining soon.
who do you have coming up next, and how can people find the show?
Oh, who's coming up next? Do I want to release that? Yeah. So I think I've got a few recordings this week, but the
Yeah,
next episode out I think is tomorrow.
yeah.
And it's either Lee Harding or Toby Coleshaw, but those two are going to follow
Okay.
one
Very
after the
good.
other. So recruiter enablement and then talent intelligence.
Yeah.
And then you'll notice my camera game and mic game and everything else goes up a level because when I spoke to Lars Schmidt about coming on, I thought, well, with the setup and the crystal clear imagery that he has,
Yeah.
I have to up my game to at least come, if he's a 10 out of 10, I need to be at least three
Yeah.
from my one grainy camera that I had before.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's coming up, and then I've got some really interesting stuff on AI ethics with a couple of legal folks. Thinking about the implication for HR and then people functions more broadly. Lots of stuff coming up. We've got kind of I think 8 in the back
Yeah.
catalogue ready to
And
launch.
where do people find it if they want to tune in?
All good stores. No, I think Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn primary social channel, and I
Yeah.
think social platforms that I'm not on. The marketing team are kindly sharing on things like TikTok and
Yeah.
Instagram
So the
and the
hashtag,
like.
correct me if I'm wrong, is power of people building.
Yes, yes, the
Okay.
power of people building. Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Sam, we've gone a bit over time, but thank you very much for being a great guest today. I'll certainly come on your webcast whenever you like. Just say the word and I'll be there.
I'll
Uh,
be throwing you the questions to switch it up. It's usually this way around with us, but yeah,
I,
I'm
I,
absolutely going to throw you some.
one of the best things of doing these shows is that it forces you to do your homework and to have a broader knowledge of what's going on in the marketplace, because it's very easy to find yourself being a bit myopic, just looking at your own area of expertise and not looking beyond that. But when you do look beyond that, then uh, you start to understand things in a whole different way. So it's much better to do that, and I hope for the audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, special, and thanks for having me on, buddy. Really great to be involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say a few words to the audience as we go. So I'll wave you off, and I'll catch you later. Thanks very much, Sam. So thank you very much again to Sam for joining us. Before we finish up today, I just want to fill you in on upcoming events with TAtech. As you'll know, we have not only the webcast going on, but we have fantastic in-person events scheduled. Our next event, I'll just see if I can switch to that so you can see here. Our next event is in Washington, D.C. in June, on the 4th to the 6th of June. We have a spectacular lineup of speakers. And as you can see, it's at the International Spy Museum. So I don't think anywhere could be more appropriate than that for recruitment, because we're all detectives in our own way. But having the event there in June is going to be fantastic. Tickets are going fast, so please book your tickets, get reserved, and make sure that you're involved for that. The next event after that is going to be in Paris. So in Paris on the 17th and 19th of September, immediately after the Olympics, there's the Olympics, then there's the Paralympics, and then there's TAtech, of course, in Paris. I know that Paris will be absolutely buzzing at that time, as will Washington. In an election year, Washington will be a boiling pot, and Paris will be really cool too in September. Beyond that, we have another event coming up in Boston in November, but I'll give you more details on that once we get closer to it. But I really look forward to seeing you at either of those events, or both, if you can make it. Thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks, Sam, for being a fantastic guest. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show of Stepping Up in the next few weeks. Thank you very much again, and goodbye.